Hey everyone, it's Kate, and today in my Sewing with Wool series, I'm going to set in the sleeves on the Camber dress. We're filming this on Facebook Live, but if you're watching on YouTube and you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to learn more about sewing and quilting, you'll want to subscribe to our channel. I will include links to my other Sewing with Wool series, either as cards up here or also in the description below. So off camera, I sewed the side seams and sewed the back yoke by hand to the seam allowance. And so now I am ready to set in the sleeves. So the first step, if you've sewn up the side seams, then you need to sew up the sides or the underarm seam on the sleeve. So I sewed that, finished the edges, pressed it open, and pressed it open. Oh, there I can see. And then sleeve heads are always longer than the armhole that you're going to sew them into. And so you need to do some gathering stitches. And I did 2 rows of 4.5 millimeter stitches, straight stitches. And I did one at 3/8 of an inch and the other right on the 5/8 of an inch, which is the seam allowance for this pattern. And I'll be able to use this one as a guide when I'm sewing the sleeve in. And the Merchant and Mills instructions have a fun idea, fun for nerdy sewers. You do a back stitch on one end of each row of stitches because I did it on this end of the 3/8 and then this end of the 5/8. So when you're gathering, you don't pull your thread all the way out, which is something that I have done more times than I'd like to admit. So I have already sewn the first sleeve in on this project, so I know that I don't need to do a ton of gathering. I always do this step before I put the sleeve in the armhole, and you'll see why in a sec. Because I like to shape it into, oops, I'm going to put this right side out. I know it's hard for you to tell because it's pinstriped on both sides. But, so I've pulled up some gathers, and you see I have like a little bonnet. And I'm going to do a makeshift, I want to make sure you can see it this way. Yes. Yeah, okay. I'm making a little makeshift stand for my ham. But the nice thing about hams is that they are made to replicate shoulders. So we want to shape the sleeve head into a shoulder shape before you put it into the armhole. And I'm just barely touching my fabric, getting some steam going, and letting it cool under my hand. And so I've created this little kind of a bonnet. It looks like a bonnet to me, but the 5/8 inch seam allowance is flat. It's not going to be puckered in any way or gathered. And even though there are waves here in the seam allowance, it's going to go into the sleeve, the armhole, nice and smooth. So I'm ready to pin this to the armhole. And so I always do this with the dress inside out and the sleeve right side out. And I'm going to slip the sleeve in. I know that this is the correct side because I did the other side a couple days ago, but the back of the sleeve head always has 2 notches on it, and the front of the front has 1 notch, and the armhole should have matching notches. So I first pin at the underarm / side seam, and then up until the first notches, you really just want the armhole and the sleeve head to be 1-to-1. There's no gathering. They're both the same length. So I just pin from the side seam, underarm seam to those first notches. Easy peasy. And then it gets a little bit trickier. This sleeve head did not have a marking for the shoulder seam, which most do, and so I found that a little bit annoying, but I did figure out that there's a notch in the sleeve head right where the yoke, the back yoke is, so I'm going to pin that in place. And then I'm just going to pin the top of the sleeve head. And I have, partly because I did the other sleeve the other day, I've kind of gathered the exact right amount. That does not usually happen. Usually I have to gather a little more, a little less, but this is going in quite easily. So I do a lot of pins when I'm putting in a sleeve. And those of you who have taken classes from me in person know that I'm not a big lover of pinning, but it really does help when you're setting in a sleeve. All right, so now I'm going to go over to the sewing machine. All right, are we good? All right. Now you're unfortunately not going to be able to see this perfectly, but hopefully you'll see it well enough. I'm using a navy blue thread because I don't think you're going to be able to see my stitches well anyway, so I might as well match. All right. So I'm starting at the underarm / side seam. And if you saw my sewing with knits video, this machine and its backstitch is very confusing to me. Okay. Here we go. I do take it super slow when I'm doing sleeves because then I can get them in the first go, which when I do it fast, that does not happen. So I've made it to the first notch. I'm going to get this out of the way as best I can. And now I'm in the gathered area, and I have my line of gathering stitches right at the 5/8, which is great because it's hard enough to stay on the seam allowance with when you're on a sharp curve. And I can feel a lump in there, so I'm moving the fabric out of the way with my finger. It's hard enough to stay on the seam allowance when you're on a sharp curve, but when you're sewing two pieces that are really different shapes together, and one is a little bit wavy, it is really hard. So I love this line of gathering stitches as my guide. If you're in Montana, you know that we got a boatload of snow last night. Rachel and I both walked this morning. It was a wet, kind of icy snow. And then Rachel shoveled the sidewalk and the driveway at the shop. And now she is filming me. I wore my super warm coat. And next week, it's supposed to be 50 because it's fall in Montana. Okay, we're almost done. And I'm at the second notch, and I want to make sure I'm kind of twisting my dress up here. I don't have my guide anymore, but I can use the line here. Let me make sure. Yep, that's good. We're almost done. I'm going to back stitch a little, and boom. So I'm going to go back over to the overhead camera. Oops. So at this point, I would carefully check to make sure. Oh, I do have a pucker there. So I will fix that, but not right now. So I have one pucker, but I can fix that pretty easily. So, and after it all looks good, I'm going to turn the dress right side out and get the hem again. And you want to press the seam allowance toward the sleeve. And once again, the hem comes in very handy. This way, there. So I've got, you can see my pucker here, but the seam allowance is going that way, and I'm going to get my press cloth because I do kind of want to get in there and press. So with the sleeve on the hem, I'm not pressing hard. I'm just giving it a lot of steam and some heat and letting it cool on the ham. And if there weren't a pucker there, it would look really good. So I will go all the way around the sleeve, pressing it in place on the ham with the seam allowance going toward the sleeve. And once I get it nice and smooth and beautiful looking, I'll serge the edges together and cut them down a little bit so they're not too bulky. You can also trim and zigzag. And then I will hem and the dress will be done. So I will, let me just do this one really quick and then I'll go to the front. So on Wednesday, I'll be hemming the sleeves and the bottom hem of this dress. And so I hope you join me then, which it really will be at noon. I know that I accidentally scheduled this one for noon today, but it was really 9:30. And in the next few weeks, I have 3 really fun interviews scheduled. I'm going to be doing some quilt making and some gift making videos. So I hope you subscribe and join us over the next few weeks. And if you're in Montana, stay warm and safe, and the roads are really slippery. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.